Hi.
Hey Mary, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very nice. I love what I'm seeing here with this background. This is so
Oh,
cool.
thank you.
Yeah,
So,
it looks awesome.
yeah, so I have interviewed you before. I'm just,
Where was that? When and where
oh
was
yeah.
that?
So I've interviewed you only via phone, and it was just before your previous tour.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So 2019.
Yes, that was great. And I saw you in Melbourne and Sydney. You guys were great.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, a lot has happened since then, hasn't it? So we're in a
Tell me
different
about
world,
it.
aren't we? Yeah. So
Yeah.
how interesting. How interesting that we're getting to talk essentially right either side of a global pandemic. um, and everything that's happened in our own lives and stuff. So yeah, how cool, Mary.
Yeah. Did you just finish an interview? Do you want to have a bit of a break and then we'll
You're
chat?
so you're so nice. You're so nice. No, it's fine. I've got my coffee. I've got my mug that says seriously, really, you're amazing. So that's
That's
always
so
good.
true.
Didn't buy it for myself. Didn't buy it for myself. Good. All right. No, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's
Yes,
do it.
yes, you're always so sweet. Now we've got 20 minutes, so let's see how we go. Last time I interviewed you, I loved your story about how you joined the band. And we have a different clientele now, a wider audience, and it's on, on videos. So I was wondering if you could run through it again, because I love that story about how you
Yeah,
joined the
sure.
band and the phone call you got from Andrew, who you didn't know was Andrew.
Good memory. Yeah. So let me try and distill this down into its key parts because it is quite a long story, and I want to make sure that gets to the important bits. So I get a phone call one day from a number that I don't recognize, from a mysterious person who was asking me to come and audition for his band, a band he won't tell me who it is, what they're doing, or anything other than they've got a US tour lined up. I say, "What's the music like?" He says it's like a mixture of Motorhead and U2, which in retrospect, I realize is actually quite a good approximation of the Sisters' sound. You've got the sort of the driving industrial elements to it, the aggression and the punk rock, and you've also got the ethereal melodic aspect to it as well. So I go up to this audition having no idea what I'm going for, only told to bring some Hendrix licks. And I get into a room, and there's these three guys sat around, none of whom I recognize. And they start playing these, and the other guitar player says, "Can you play this riff? Can you play this? Can you play that?" Now, I can't read music, but I'm good at picking up things by ear. So I was able to quite quickly emulate what he was playing and do a bit of soloing over this, whatever. And in retrospect, I realized that the riffs I was being shown were Sisters songs that they hadn't actually released, but they still had a Sisters kind of feel and sound to them. And so at some point, I must have gone, maybe this is the Sisters of Mercy, maybe, but that's bizarre. That's weird. That's crazy. I've never worked with a big band before. I've only ever been in my own band, and I've never been in this sort of situation. So I thought, I know, I'll play a well known Sisters of Mercy riff and see if anybody in this room responds or reacts. I did that. One of the guys goes, "That's one of our songs." And I vividly remember looking at my hands and they were shaking because I was so nervous that I was in the presence of a band that I'd grown up listening to. And now there was a possibility that I could be part of it. How surreal.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I am quite grateful that I didn't know who it was because I went into that audition feeling pretty blasé and quite relaxed and was able to actually be myself rather than under the pressure of this could be life changing. And so, yeah, then I think the next day or a couple of days later, they phoned me up and said that they'd like me to do it. Why didn't I recognize them? Well, I hadn't followed the band that closely during the years leading up to that, so I wasn't really aware of what the band members looked like. Plus, it made me discover, and I later corroborated this with something else I'm about to tell you, that the way you recognize people is so much about context. And that's not just to do with meeting famous people, it's to do with if you saw someone that you just wouldn't expect to be in a certain environment, you may not recognize them instantly because what are they doing there? And I was playing backstage with a different band a few years ago. I was backstage with a different band a few years ago, and this man walks in to the dressing room. This middle-aged man dressed in black, sort of red gingerish hair, and I think, who's this man who's just walked in? Some building staff or something, you know. And I thought, oh, it's James Hetfield of Metallica. Because I wasn't expecting James Hetfield to walk in, my mind wouldn't put the two things together. So context is everything. So that's why I was in that room. Maybe had I been told that and I'd gone in and gone, yep, there's Eldritch, there's blah, blah, blah. But I didn't expect it. I was so far away from whatever I conceived of this band I was going. I thought I was going to go and join a tribute band. I remember that being a thought in my head, that sounds like some sort of tribute band or something. So I think I've been fortunate enough now to meet lots of people that I've hit heroes of mine, or people that I've looked up to over the years, whether that be sometimes in support bands. It's been amazing. Like, we've been supported by, sisters have been supported by a couple of bands who are iconic to me, like Therapy and Jesus Jones, who were bands that I grew up listening to and massively shaped myself as a songwriter. And I'm meeting these guys and they're supporting us. What? And that's been really surreal and brilliant. And having that license to actually be able to go and talk to these people without looking like a massive psycho stalker, because you're playing on the same bill, so of course you're going to go say hi. And I've always tried to rein it in. Nice one, guys, good show. Not like, it was amazing. And at festivals as well, because often at festivals you'll just see other people in the catering or backstage. And also when we did it was really surreal, was when we did the Soundwave Festival
2012.
Yes, good. And because you're flying between shows and there's generally only one flight, everyone's on the flight. So you're sat there going, there's Tom DeLonge, there's the guys from Machine Head, you know, there's Rob Flynn, it's like, just, oh wow, Rob Flynn's reading the In-Flight magazine. He seems to be interested in that watch. It's just surreal.
And they're like, there's Ben.
Yeah, of course. You know, they couldn't believe it.
So does it feel different being in the band now than it did when you first started?
Hugely. I actually feel like I am a integral member of the band now.
Yeah.
Whereas when I joined, understandably, I felt sort of, even though it was always very clear that I was a member of the band, I was not a session player, I still felt a bit like a session player, because I was playing other people's songs. And even though I was given a lot of freedom about, well, how do you do the guitar solos, what guitars do you want to use, and all that sort of thing, I still felt as if it was my duty to emulate somebody else's work in a way that was pleasing for both the band and the audience.
Yeah.
Whereas now, having actually co-written almost half of this set that we're playing now, because we're playing a lot of new material, it's really fulfilling and rewarding and kind of surreal as well to have reached the point where I guess I'm a good enough songwriter to write for a band that inspired me and influenced me. And that's amazing. What an amazing accolade. How grateful I feel to have been able to be part of this writing process.
That's fantastic. And I can see the Cult poster in the background.
Yeah.
You actually met Ian Astbury?
I have. And it was brilliant because we played together at a festival in Portugal in 2019, and I nervously, because I'm a huge fan, and again they were one of my 4 foundation bands that were the bands that set me on the road to rock, and getting to meet Ian Astbury, and he was super nice and chill, and he and we watched the Manic Street Preachers together. We went out and we watched the Manic Street Preachers do a Guns N' Roses cover, which was
There's another one. Fantastic. Right?
Well, Manics, oh yeah, incredible. Lyrics, just James D. Bradfield, the voice, oh, wow. Anyway, and then Ian said, oh yeah, you could just come and watch us from the side of the stage. So we went up and they were doing like the Sonic Temple thing, and just before the Sun King was starting, and Ian was on the side of the stage with us, and Billy and the guys were playing, and it was the intro, and Ian was just standing there, and he just, I think the thing he said was he just turned to us just before he walked on and he just went, you know, man, it's a trip. And then he just walked off with his shades on and just perfectly went and played the first bit of Sun King. And it was just this most surreal experience that had you told me when I was age 15 and got that poster, that one day, not only would I be standing on the side of the stage in Portugal, how do I end up there, with Ian Astbury, having just watched the Manic Street Preachers and I'm going to play the festival myself with the Sisters of Mercy. The whole thing is just mind-blowing, this kind of perfect storm of awesomeness. I will always remember that Astbury moment because it was so perfectly Astbury, as I understand the little I know of him and understand it seems so in line with his sort of musical identity. Yeah, and it was brilliant, and it was just a brilliant experience.
Yeah. I'm just going to go back a step. You know how you said you've been writing the music, but you also, just before you toured here in 2019, you said there was the process you were doing to making the songs was a bit like a factory line. Was it like that now, more recently after the pandemic?
What I find so, I guess this must be the case with many sort of international bands, is that when I look back on the songs that are in the set now, I think, okay, so that bit was written in the Netherlands, that bit was written in Belgium, that bit was written in London, that bit was written in Bristol, that bit was, it's just brilliant that because of the nature of the fact that we're traveling around all the time, and that when we get together in studios to write, and when we send stuff to each other over the internet, it's all in these really disparate places, and that internationally these songs have come together. So it has been a little bit different this time. There's been much of the songwriting has been done in that factory line way. Again, one of us comes with an idea, another adds to it, then more is added, and then we go back and we can change things. There's been both sides of both ends of the spectrum have existed during this creative process. So what I'll find, the way that I write, is either I'll sit down with maybe right, I want to write a song that's this kind of feel, this kind of speed, create the drum track, just very simple loop, go round and round, just start playing, and then think about the parts and sort of, I often find that if I sing ideas, it's better than playing them, because with the singing, there is no limitation to what I can create. But with the guitar playing, there are certain patterns and shapes that I get locked into, or sort of habits. But I much prefer that if I just sing something, then I can transpose it onto the guitar. Like riffs and melodies, also guitar solos. My guitar solo is usually quite basic, quite melodic. But often top lines of what would be a good top line here, vocally or guitar wise or keyboard wise or piano wise. Those are the ones. And I learned so much from Andrew about how to do this in a really effective way, because Sisters melodies usually have got 3 or 4 notes max. And how do you create something memorable and meaningful with 3 or 4 notes, the same 3 or 4 notes that everybody's used for the expanse of time? And it's a lot to do with whereabouts in the bar they fall, and how you phrase them and how you play them, rather than what the notes actually are. Though of course that's important too. And you're learning to be economical with notes, with instrumentation, with, okay, we don't need to have that guitar going all the time, it just does that bit there. And then that's a lot of stuff that Andrew taught me when we were doing the songwriting about. He got me to listen to a lot of Motown music, about how everything has its place, and that's where I learned a lot of really effective songwriting techniques. So either it's a case of sitting down and thinking methodically about what would be good, whilst at the same time I'm sort of pulling these things from the ether. It's like, I'm just going to sing something and see what happens. The other side is when you're not in front of the guitar and you are just walking somewhere, or you wake up and you just have this idea and it's come from the ether, and you don't know, you didn't plan it, and you have to get that recorded down just into your phone so that you can then work on it later. And those are often, in fact, nearly always, those spontaneous ideas are really good. They just seem to come from somewhere else. And if you speak to a lot of writers, they may say that a lot of their greatest ideas came from the ether. And I think you can only have that access to wherever there's some sort of bank of riffs that are and ideas that are in the ether somewhere. And you only have access to them if you earn enough sort of frequent flyer points or frequent writer points that allow you to have access to the lounge. So I'm going with this metaphor. So even though they seem like they come from nowhere, you've earned the right to access them through years and years and years of composition. And there's something that maybe factory line is a bad analogy because it suggests that you're just mass producing something that's exactly the same every time. Maybe it's more like, maybe imagine it more like a sort of an independent office where there's some creatives working together and each is better at a certain stage of the process than the other. So that's the way that we would create together, and often it would be that a certain member of the band, of the writing team, is really good at a certain thing, so they will do that bit, and then they will have the humility to pass it on and go, this is your bit now that you are good at, you do your bit. Another really freeing thing that we did as writers was we were to say, any songs that we're working on together, we will have equal credit for those songs, because us working together is what makes these songs happen. And that was such a freeing thing, because it meant that you didn't find yourself pushing your own songs over others because they were your songs. You just wanted the best songs to be out there because you knew that you would all benefit from the same way, in the same way. And then it was just like, great, relax, let's just be as awesome as we can, without it being like, oh, but no, I've got to try and get something into that song so that I've got a little bit more on it.
And so these collaborations, a new album?
Well, I think the party line here is that there's no plans to make an album, there's no plans not to make an album, and that's my final word on it.
Maybe you could release a live album or something, and it has a mixture.
Well, interestingly, I met a young fan actually on the street here. Actually, bizarrely, I got recognised, which doesn't happen very often.
I doubt that.
But what was great about it was I got recognised in front of some new people that I didn't know very well, so it made me look cool. Plus, I was actually wearing a cool jacket at the time, so it wasn't like I was out in my anorak. It's like, are you no? So I got recognised by this guy, this 21-year-old guy, and he stood. I love the new songs. I love this. How have you heard them? He go, oh, I listen to them all the time. How do you listen to them all the time? And because he'd made a YouTube playlist, because the nature of phones now is that you do get a good, a decent amount of fidelity that is enough for you to listen to and still get like a musical experience from it. So he basically created a new album for himself out of these YouTube live videos, and he knew the riffs and he knew the lyrics, and it was like, oh, and it was actually, oh, how cool that he can then come and watch the show and he knows the songs, and there's not even an album out.
And so do other people, because they're listening to them as well.
Yeah, so I'd be looking down in the audience on this last tour and be like, how the hell do you know the words? And but it's exactly that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, I'm just going to go back a step. With the pandemic, you know, a lot of people have, it was harsh for a lot of people, but also some had opportunities from them, and you worked with a lot of people during that time.
Yeah. So I think what it allowed was that, see, what's really interesting is that a number of the things that happened in the pandemic in terms of the collaborations that I was able to do with people online, because suddenly people were at home and they didn't really have anything to do. So it's like, right, now I'm going to get you. Was that those things are coming to fruition now, which is really exciting. There's I can't yet reveal the nature of these things, but I can give you the vague concept of them, which is one that I've co-written 2 songs with a band that I think are amazing, and one of them is going to be the title track for their new album, which is just mind-blowing for me. 2 is that I've done a cover version of one of my favorite songs with some incredible people from the metal and rock scene. Again, and that's hopefully going to be coming out sometime soon-ish. And I've been working on an album with a member of a band that, again, is a huge influence on me, and it's been something a little bit different. And he and I have been working together on writing it and getting guests in to do stuff. And so they were like, and then I wrote a lot for Sisters during that time. We co-wrote a lot of stuff, and I wrote some of my own music. But I think it was a real case of I did a lot, and a number of things just didn't happen. They just didn't come to fruition. But that's how it works, isn't it? It's a numbers game. The more stuff you do, the more that that will actually occur, even though the drop off of stuff is also large as well.
But you know, is this what you're talking about? Because this is just on your. I'm just gonna.
All right, no, that's something I didn't even think about. So that guy,
this is the secret, because I was like, oh, you know what? I know your secret.
No, so I co-wrote a song with Kai,
Unbelievable.
Air, and he's an amazing artist, and I was very humbled and flattered when he came to me and said, "Look, I've got this piece of music, but I've got no words or vocal melodies for it. Can you write something?" And so I listened to it, and I came up with these vocal melodies, and I sang some ideas. And he said, "Look, I really like the way your voice sounds. Why don't we do it as a duet sort of thing?" So that's a song that I'm really, really proud of. It's called Dead Zone, and it's on Spotify, and there's a really nice lyric video on YouTube as well by Esprit d'Air, which is French. And that was a really great lockdown collaboration that came to fruition, and came to fruition quite quickly as well. So yeah, I wrote the.
You're touring next year.
Yeah, so my band that I'm the singer of, Diamond Black, we are touring with Esprit d'Air around the UK, 6 shows next year in February. And again, I feel that came from the collaboration that Kai did, and I'm hopeful that we might get an opportunity at some point for me to go on stage and sing that song with him during their set.
I see. I was hoping you were hopeful that that tour comes down to Australia.
Oh, I'm always hopeful for that. And I just feel so grateful to have ever been able to tour in Australia, because I know most bands don't, because of the distance and the expense, and the fact that when you actually get there, that there aren't necessarily that many places that you can play to make it financially and economically viable. And yeah. And I from the other side as well, I feel really grateful that I've been able to go there, because I know that fans of alternative music in Australia have said, we thought we'd never see you, because there are a lot of bands that we never get to see because of where we are. And it's really, I feel really lucky to have had the chance to be able to actually go out and play. And it makes it even more special that I really want these shows to be really good, because I know that it's special for fans in this part of the world to actually experience bands that they love.
We've got 2 questions we usually ask everyone we interview. I asked you these last time, but let's see if they've changed. Firstly, how would you describe Sisters of Mercy, the music, in food form?
Did you ask me this last time? Wow.
I loved your answer last time.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I'm going to just go with the first thing that came to my mind, which is sushi.
Nice.
Because it's interesting and a little bit artisan and wholesome, but also it's got an element of intrigue and enigma, and it's not something that you have all the time.
Yeah, and it's very much an acquired taste for some.
Absolutely, and it's healthy.
Would you like to know what you said last time?
Bring it on.
An espresso martini.
That's much better, actually. I prefer that. I was thinking food. I didn't think it could be drink as well.
Yeah.
I prefer my old answer. I think that's ace. Although maybe it's because I don't drink alcohol anymore. Back then I did, so maybe my mind's just removed any alcohol from my kind of like my sort of mental capacity of like, what could it be?
Last one is, well, magazine, What's My Scene? what is your scene?
But actually, it's radically changed. And again, I think removing alcohol from my life, it has an impact on that. So whereas I would have said to you in 2019, I would have said, oh, my scene is my local London scene where I go out to rock bars and I play at various, get up and play random songs, and sometimes I do these fun tribute nights that are like 80s rock themed, and we get up and we do all these songs. My scene now is that I go to board game cafes and drink coffee and hang out with nerds.